My brother looked me in the eye at his rehearsal dinner and said, "I need you to leave. You weren't supposed to be here tonight." I had driven 6 hours to get there. I was holding a gift bag. The whole table went quiet. I said okay. I picked up my bag, walked back to my car, and sat in the parking lot of that restaurant for 20 minutes before I could see the road clearly enough to drive. I didn't open the gift bag back up. I didn't call anyone. I just drove home, and I told myself the whole way that it didn't matter, that I was used to it, that this was just how things were with my family. But here's the thing. I couldn't stop thinking about the entire 6 hours home. My brother had no idea what was inside that bag, and neither did my parents. And I had spent the last 4 years making sure of that. Let me back up. I'm the younger one. My brother is 4 years older than me. And growing up, that gap felt like a canyon. He was the one my parents talked about at dinner. The one whose grades got taped to the refrigerator. The one my mother called our pride. Without seeming to notice, I was sitting right there at the same table, eating the same pot roast. I don't say that to make my parents sound cruel. They weren't cruel. They were just oriented. The way some families orbit around one person without meaning to, without even knowing they're doing it. My brother was that person in our family. He always had been. His name is Griffin. He's 34 now. He works in commercial real estate, drives a nice truck, and has the kind of easy confidence that comes from spending your whole life being told you're exceptional. I love him. I do. It took me a long time to say that, without feeling like I was lying. But I do love him. I just also spent a long time being completely invisible to him. When I was 22 and he was 26, our parents hit a financial wall. My dad had been working in manufacturing for most of his adult life, and the plant he'd worked at for 18 years shut down. My mom had a part-time bookkeeping job that covered maybe a third of their monthly expenses. They had a mortgage on a house in Akron, Ohio, a modest house, the house I grew up in, and suddenly they were 3 months behind. Griffin was already living in Charlotte by then. Good job, new girlfriend, new life. I was fresh out of college, working an entry-level accounting job in Columbus, making enough to cover my rent and groceries with not a lot left over. My dad called me one night, which was unusual, because my dad didn't really call me. He called Griffin, and Griffin would sometimes pass information along like a relay station, and he sounded tired in a way I hadn't heard before. Not sad tired, defeated tired. He didn't ask me for anything. He just told me what was happening, the way you might tell someone about weather you can't control. The mortgage was $1,650 a month. They'd gotten one deferral already. The bank wasn't going to give them another. I told him I'd figure something out. He said, "That's okay, sweetheart. We'll manage." But the way he said it, I knew they wouldn't. I called the mortgage company the next day. This part I want to be clear about, because I've had people ask me why I didn't just write my parents a check or transfer money directly. The answer is that I knew my parents, my mother especially. If I handed them money, she would spend a week trying to refuse it and then spend the rest of the year trying to pay me back in casseroles and guilt. I didn't want a transaction. I just wanted the problem solved. So I called the loan servicer and asked what my options were. After a lot of back and forth, and I mean a lot, I was on hold for probably 2 hours total across 3 different calls. I got set up as a third-party bill payer. It's actually not that unusual. Adult children do it for aging parents. The payments would come from my account. They'd be applied to the loan, and my parents would get their regular statement showing the balance going down. No special notation. Just payments being made. I set it up as automatic. $1,650 a month, withdrawn on the 15th. I didn't tell my parents. I know how that sounds. I've thought about it 1,000 times, and I still don't have a completely clean answer for why I kept it quiet. Part of it was practical. I didn't want the pushback, the refusals, the guilt. But part of it, if I'm honest, was something smaller and more personal. I wanted to do something real for my family without it becoming a whole thing. without it being discussed and weighed and turned into a moment where everyone had feelings about it. I just wanted to help. Quietly. Without a ceremony. For the first year, it was genuinely hard. I cut my grocery budget down to almost nothing. I stopped going out. I deferred my car maintenance longer than I should have. But I got promoted at work, and then promoted again, and by year 2 it was tight but manageable. And by year 3 it had become just a fixed cost of my life, the same as my rent. My parents never asked why the mortgage was being paid. I think they assumed the deferral had converted into a modified payment plan of some kind. My mother mentioned once that the bank had worked something out, and I nodded and said that was good, and we moved on. Griffin called me on my birthday that year and talked for 4 minutes before saying he had to jump on another call. I thanked him for remembering. 4 years passed. Then Griffin got engaged. Her name is Bellamy, and she's lovely. Genuinely lovely, warm and funny, and exactly the kind of person you'd want your brother to end up with. When Griffin called to tell me, he sounded happier than I'd heard him in years, and I was happy for him. I really was. The wedding was planned for September in Charlotte. Outdoor venue, vineyard setting, the whole thing. I got a save the date in the mail like everyone else. What I did not get was a bridesmaid ask, which was fine. Bellamy had 3 sisters and a best friend from college, and the wedding party was already set. I understood. What I did not expect was a call from my mother in July, about 6 weeks before the wedding, where she told me in her careful, softening voice, the one she uses when she's about to say something she knows will sting, that Griffin had asked her to let me know that my attendance at the rehearsal dinner specifically might be complicated. What does that mean? I asked. He has some concerns about seating, she said. I waited, and Bellamy's family is very large, and the private room only holds so many people, and, Mom, is he asking me not to come? A pause. He said it might be easier if you skipped the dinner and just came to the ceremony. I sat with that for a minute. I'd already booked a hotel room. I'd already requested the days off work. I'd already bought them a wedding gift, a nice one, an espresso machine from their registry that Bellamy had mentioned really wanting. I said I understood, thanked her, and got off the phone. Then I sat on my kitchen floor for a while. Here's the thing about being the overlooked sibling for your entire life. You get very good at talking yourself out of your own feelings. I was 28 years old and I had a whole internal script ready to go. He didn't mean it personally. It's just seating logistics. Don't make it a big deal. Don't be the difficult one. But I also thought about 4 years of automatic withdrawals. 4 years of $1,650 leaving my account on the 15th of every month. 4 years of my parents' mortgage being paid in full, on time, every single time. While I ate rice and beans and told myself it was worth it, I thought about how Griffin didn't know about any of that. How my parents didn't know either. How I'd become so accustomed to being invisible in my own family that I had made myself financially invisible too. I drove to the rehearsal dinner anyway. I want to be clear, I went because I wanted to see Bellamy. I genuinely liked her, and I thought she should know I was there, that I cared about this. I brought the gift bag with the espresso machine. I arrived about 15 minutes before it started. The restaurant had a private room in the back, and I could see through the glass panels that people were already seated. My parents were at the far end. Griffin was at the head of the table, laughing at something, looking completely relaxed. I found the hostess and said I was with the Caldwell party. She checked her list. I don't see you on the guest count. I'm the groom's sister. She looked at me with something that wasn't quite sympathy. Let me grab him. Griffin came out 2 minutes later, and that's when he said it, looking me in the eye, lowering his voice just slightly, like he was being reasonable. I need you to leave. You weren't supposed to be here tonight. I said, I drove 6 hours. He said, I know, I'm sorry. It's just, we're already over capacity, and I told Mom to tell you. She did, I said. I came anyway because I wanted to see Bellamy. Something shifted in his face. Not guilt exactly, more like irritation at a complication. She's busy right now, he said. I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about the 15th of every month. I thought about 2 hours on hold with the loan servicer. I thought about 4 birthdays where his call lasted 4 minutes. I put the gift bag down on the hostess stand. "Give this to her," I said. "Tell her congratulations from me." And I left. I drove home. 6 hours, stopped once for gas and bad coffee in a town I don't remember the name of. Got home at 2 in the morning, sat on my couch, and stared at my wall. I felt something I couldn't name exactly. It wasn't quite sadness, it was more like clarity. The calm that settles in when you've stopped pretending something is fine. The wedding was 2 weeks later. I did not go. I texted Bellamy directly. I had her number from a group chat and told her I was so sorry to miss it, that I hoped it was everything she dreamed, that I thought she and Griffin were going to be wonderful together. She responded with a heart emoji and, "We'll miss you." I don't know if Griffin noticed I wasn't there. No one called to ask. 3 weeks after the wedding, my mother called me. She called on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual, and her voice had that tight, held-together quality it gets when something is wrong. "The bank called your father," she said. I waited. "About the mortgage." I waited a little longer. "They said the automatic payments stopped. They wanted to make sure we knew there might be a lapse." There was a silence between us that felt like it had weight to it. "Mom," I said. "The woman at the bank," my mother said slowly, "told your father the payments had been coming from a third-party account for 4 years. Another pause. She wasn't supposed to say that, I think. But she did. "Your father asked whose name was on the account." I didn't say anything. "It was your name," my mother said. Then she started crying. Not dramatically. My mother doesn't do things dramatically. She cried the way she does everything, quietly and without making a fuss, and somehow that was worse than if she'd wailed. "How long?" she asked. 4 years, I said. "Since right after Dad's plant closed." "Every month?" "Every month." She made a sound I hadn't heard from her before. It wasn't a word. It was something older than words. "We thought," she started. "Your father thought the bank had worked out some kind of—" "I know," I said. "I let you think that. Why didn't you tell us?" And here's where I had to think carefully, because this was the question I'd been asking myself for 4 years. "Because I didn't want it to be a whole thing," I finally said. "I just wanted to help. That's all. I didn't need you to know." "But Griffin," she started, and then she stopped. "What about Griffin?" I asked. A very long pause. "Your father called him first, before me, to ask if he knew anything about it." I went still. "Griffin said he'd been helping with the mortgage for years." My mother's voice had gone very quiet. "He said he'd been sending us money and asking the bank to apply it. He said it was him." I sat down on my kitchen floor for the second time in 2 months. "Mom," I said carefully, "Griffin has never sent one payment to your mortgage. I can send you the bank records. Every transaction, every date, every confirmation number. 4 years." Silence. "He didn't know," I said. "He couldn't have known," I said. "He couldn't have known." "I never told anyone." The silence stretched. I could hear my mother breathing. "I have to go," she said. "I have to talk to your father." She hung up. I sat on my floor and looked at my kitchen. I thought about all the mornings I'd checked my account balance before buying groceries, all the months I'd decided a new pair of shoes could wait, that the dentist could wait, that everything could wait just a little longer. Then I thought about Griffin standing outside that restaurant, telling me I wasn't supposed to be there. And I felt not vengeful, not triumphant, just very, very tired. My father called me the next morning. He's not a phone person. He and I had probably had fewer than 20 real conversations in my entire adult life. But he called at 7:45 in the morning, and when I picked up, he said, "I need to understand what you did." So I explained it. All of it. The call from the loan servicer. The third-party setup. The automatic withdrawals. The year it was genuinely hard, and the years after when it got easier. The fact that I'd never once expected to be acknowledged for it, because I'd made a conscious choice not to be. He listened without interrupting. My father does that. He's a listener, which I think is part of why he and I never talked much. I used to read his silences as indifference, but I think they were just the way he processes things. When I finished, he said, "Your brother told us it was him." I know. He said he'd been doing it quietly because he didn't want to make a big deal of it. I know. Another silence. "I believe you," he said. "I'm going to need to see the records, but I believe you." "I'll send them today," I said. "Okay." A pause. "I'm sorry we weren't at that rehearsal dinner with you. I didn't know you'd come. I didn't know Griffin had told you not to come." "It's fine," I said automatically. "It's not," he said, automatically. "It's not," he said. And the way he said it, flat, definitive, like a man closing a door on a thing that had been open too long, made me have to press my lips together hard. I sent him the records that afternoon. 4 years of monthly statements. 48 transactions. Everyone time-stamped. Everyone from the same account in my name. The account number. The confirmation numbers. All of it. He called Griffin that evening. I don't know exactly what was said in that conversation because I wasn't there, and I don't think I need to be. What I know is that Griffin called me the next morning and I let it go to voicemail. And his message was 3 minutes long and very quiet, and somewhere in the middle of it his voice cracked. And I've listened to it twice and I don't know what to do with it yet. My parents drove to Columbus 3 days later. It was a Saturday. I heard the knock at my door at 10 in the morning and opened it, and there they were, my dad in his good flannel, my mom holding a Tupperware container of something that turned out to be apple cake, and my mother looked at me and said, "We should have seen you." 4 words. Past tense, present wait. I stood in my doorway and I didn't say anything for a moment, and then I stepped back and let them in. We sat at my kitchen table for almost 2 hours. My dad brought the bank records I'd sent him, printed out, and we went through them together. Not because anyone doubted them at that point, but I think because he needed to see them physically, to hold the paper, to make the thing real in a way that a screen couldn't quite do. My mother ate a piece of her own apple cake and cried twice and apologized at least 5 times, and I told her each time that I understood, that I didn't think they were bad parents, that I thought they'd just missed some things, the way all parents do. My dad said very little. Near the end, he put his hand over mine on the table and left it there for a minute, and that was more than I'd expected from him, and it was enough. Before they left, my mother asked what I needed from them going forward. It was a surprising question, practical in a way she usually wasn't, and I had to think about it. "Just see me," I said. "That's all. Just actually see me." She nodded like that was a promise she intended to keep. As for Griffin, that's still something I'm working through. I know what he did. I know he took credit for something that wasn't his, and I know that's not a small thing, but I also know my brother. I know he grew up in the same family I did, with the same pressures and expectations. And I know that sometimes people claim things they didn't earn because they're afraid of being the person who didn't earn anything. I'm not ready to forgive him yet. I want to be honest about that. But I'm also not ready to close the door completely, and I think that's okay too. What I know for certain is this. I spent 4 years paying for a house I didn't live in, for a family that didn't fully see me, and I did it without asking for anything in return. And I'd probably do it again. Not because I'm a saint, I'm genuinely not, but because that house is where I grew up. Because my dad taught me to ride a bike in that driveway. Because my mother's kitchen smells like coffee and dish soap, and something I can't name that is just specifically her. The payments stopped when I stopped them. The balance is nearly gone now anyway, less than a year left on the loan. My parents are figuring out how to make up the difference themselves, and I think that's right. I think some things need to be carried by the people they belong to. I stopped the withdrawal on the 15th. The month after the rehearsal dinner. Not as punishment. I want to be clear about that. I stopped it because I finally felt like I was allowed to. And if you're sitting there right now thinking that I should have spoken up years ago, that I should have told my parents from the beginning and saved everyone the confusion, I hear you. You might be right. But I also think about the girl I was at 22, standing in her first apartment, adding up the numbers on a legal pad, deciding that her family's stability was worth more than her own credit. I don't know that she was wrong. I think she was just working with what she had. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? And I want to ask you something genuinely. If you'd done what I did, kept something like this completely quiet for 4 years, and then found out your family had been giving someone else the credit, would you have confronted them? Or would you have left the gift on the table and walked away? I walked away, and then my family drove 9 hours to knock on my door, and I let them in. I don't know yet if that's the whole ending. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But I made them coffee in my own kitchen, and my dad held his mug with both hands the way he always does, and we sat there together in the quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was on the outside of my own family looking in. That felt like a beginning, and right now, a beginning is enough. I've thought about that parking lot a lot since then, sitting in my car outside that restaurant, not crying, just still. The way you go still when something finally confirms what you already knew but kept talking yourself out of. What I've come to understand is that the way things unfolded wasn't random. It followed a kind of logic that I think most of us recognize when we're honest with ourselves. What you put into the world eventually finds its way back to you, and so does what you take. Not always quickly, not always neatly, but it does find its way back. I spent 4 years doing something quietly difficult because I believed it was the right thing to do. I didn't do it to be praised. I did it because I was 22 years old and I loved my family, and I couldn't think of a reason not to. That's the thing about acting with real integrity. You usually can't point to a single dramatic reason. You just do it because it lines up with who you're trying to be. Griffin took credit for something he didn't do. I don't think he did it out of pure malice. I think he did it because the opportunity was there and because he'd spent his whole life being the one who was seen, and admitting that he hadn't done this particular thing would have meant admitting there was something he missed. That's a hard thing to admit. It takes a kind of honesty that most people only find when they're cornered. He was cornered. And then he had to figure out who he was going to be in that moment. I think about what it took for my dad to call me at 7:45 in the morning. My dad, who doesn't call. My dad, who processes things in silence and takes 3 days to respond to a text. He called because something in him understood that there was a wrong that needed to be looked at directly, without flinching. That took something from him. I don't underestimate it, and I think about what it took for me to keep going. Month after month, year after year, without recognition, without anyone even knowing. That kind of persistence doesn't come from wanting applause. It comes from somewhere quieter. A decision, made once, and then remade every single month on the 15th, that this was worth doing. That the people on the other end of it were worth it, even when they couldn't see me clearly,